your life, you deserve to be more, be more, do more, have more, and give more. And now the Becoming More podcast with Dianna Kokoszka.
So good to have you on the show today. I know you're going to be adding value to each and every one of us. Thank you for being here.
Our pleasure. We are so looking forward to spending time with you, Dianna.
Well, it's always a pleasure because one of the things that we both agree on is adding value to people. And your new book, I'm telling you right here, I just love it. I've actually bought it for all of the people that I'm mentoring right now. And I recommend whoever's listening to this, it is Awaken Your Potential, 10 Ways to Unlock Greatness by Chad Reyes. And of course, we have your wonderful wife joining us today. Danielle always adds so much, and I'm excited to have you both here.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Well, let's start out because today about thinking about the psychology of wealth. A lot of people think having a lot of money is what wealth is all about. So what is the difference between money and wealth?
You know, I'll share a quick story. We had a coach many years ago that was working with us in one of our businesses. And he was talking about how most people don't understand what money really is. Money is a medium of exchange. So meaning when we bring our value to the world exchanges dollars. And that is our ability then to use those dollars to be able to purchase the things that we need in our life. So a lot of people confuse money with wealth. Wealth is very different, right? Money is just a way that we could exchange in our modern era, right? We use US dollars as money or currency, but wealth is way beyond that, right? The US government can change the value of the US dollar. My wealth doesn't change. What may change is the dollars and the value of the dollars that are in the account. But wealth is Danielle and I, and we talk about it in the book, we talk about these 5 capitals, and that's real wealth. That's when you're able to have financial capital, intellectual capital, social capital, human capital, and spiritual capital. Those 5 capitals creates true wealth.
I think the big thing is when people think about wealth, they do think about the financial. The other 4, it doesn't even cross their mind. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think we've been conditioned really to think about just the financial aspect. And, Chad and I share often through one of our companies that, wealth, finances transferred to generations, right, gets harder and harder and less able to transfer. Actually, by the 4th generation, 96% of wealth does not get transferred. So what we believe is it's the preparation. So there's 2 reasons why. Breakdown of trust breaks down communication. And the second one is the lack of preparation for the next generation. So, and I think that's where the other fishes, we call it fishes, right? The other aspects of wealth comes into play where it's able to help you not only the finances, but everything else that helped build that wealth to be able to help transfer to generations.
Often when we're having conversations with clients at Wealth and Legacy Group, we'll ask them this question. And the question is, if you had all 5 capitals and you could only have 2 of them, which one would they be? And now all of these people are very successful families, but almost never is it the finances, because they know that the financial capital that they've amassed came from the other 4, came from their intellectual capital, their social capital, the networks that they've built, their human capital, it's the giftedness that God has given them, and then their spiritual capital to be grounded. And for us, it's our faith, for others, it's traditions, right? It's so interesting when you ask that question, because a lot of times you think that they're going to say their financial capital, and most of them said, if my children or my grandchildren did not have the financial capital that I have, but they had the other 4, they would build the financial capital quicker than we did and bigger than we did.
Okay, so you both talk about generational wealth, yet how many people actually teach their kids about money? There's really no classes in school that teach them about building wealth. What do you suggest we do as parents to help our children and our grandchildren understand what wealth truly is, all 5 aspects?
Yeah. So I love the sign that you have something behind you that says, change your thoughts and you'll change your life. Does that say life?
Yes.
Yeah. So change your thoughts and you'll change your life. So we use a methodology, right, that we talk about it's called awareness, right? Thoughts impact beliefs. Beliefs impact behaviors and behaviors create results. Belief systems drive our behaviors and then that's what creates our results. A lot of families have terrible belief systems around money. To be honest with you, it's pretty terrible. And many years ago, when I had a terrible belief system around money, I had gone to a conference. The gentleman's name was Harv T. Eker, the Millionaire Mindset, right?
Mhm.
And in that process, he was asking the people that were in that room, like, how did you come to your belief systems around money? And a lot of our belief systems around money is based in scarcity and lack. And it's because I know for me, and I could share that in mine, we didn't come from wealth. So what would happen is it would all be, do you think with the Rockefellers, if we had the lights on, do you think money grows on trees?
Are we Con Edison?
We can't, is our last name Con Edison? So all of those things create a belief system around money. But really, at the end of the day, money is neutral. Money is not good or bad. Money, it's the definition that we give money that gives it its meaning.
Yeah, so I'll share a story. When Chad and I started working together, he's sharing his background, right? He had this mindset that the lack of money, he didn't have a great relationship with it, and the lack of money was like the root of all evil, right?
Destroy our family.
Right, and that's what he wanted to go after. And I came in and we started dating, and I came from where my family started to create wealth. Well, as my family started to create wealth, it became a magnifying glass, and we started to see a lot of dysfunction, like a lot of things underneath it, where to me, money now was the root of all evil. So to him, the lack of money was, to me, the money was, and then we had to come together. And what I love what God did was understanding that the love of money is the root of all evil, and how our mindsets, and we had to start to come together and say, okay, well, what is money? Money is a tool to be able to fulfill the things that we have been called to fulfill through our businesses, with our family, and how do we leave it for the next generation? Because my family, they loved each other. They knew how to make money, but they didn't know how to transfer any of those five capitals to us. So that's where my heart came in and said, how can we help others to unlock that?
Yeah. And, kind of adding on my wife, what she shared, which was awesome and it's true. I think we have to be very careful of our life. Yeah. A lot of the times, right, we're asking schools to teach our children on money. Our children and our grandchildren are learning about money through your relationship with money. So really at the end of the day, I can tell, Danielle and I have 20 nieces and nephews. I can tell my nieces and nephews everything I want about money, but they're going to see how I interact in my relationship with money. They're going to learn more about that than what I tell them, right? As parents and as people that, whether you're very successful or just getting started or anywhere in between, your relationship with money is going to be caught by your children more than anything you teach them. So you want to know how when I talk to very successful families with their wealth, it's a very simple thing. The better relationship you have with your money, the better relationship your kids and grandkids will have with money. A lot of people don't want to talk about money. They don't want to talk about it when they'll find out what I have when I'm gone. That is a terrible relationship with money. The truth of it is it's the reason why your kids probably don't want to talk about money, because they see mom and dad not talk about money, and then grandkids don't talk about money. But it's a healthy thing when we have real conversations around it, because what we're doing is we're preparing them to have real conversations. Because the world we live in, while you and I and Danielle, we believe in a higher power known as Jesus, the truth of it is that the world is ran by dollars and cents. And if we can't talk about dollars and cents, then we're missing it.
Well, and I've always said energy, that money's an energy. Otherwise, it couldn't be printed on paper. It runs through the air from bank to bank. It's on a plastic card. I mean, and if we complained about each other, let's say, Danielle, you or Chad complained about each other all the time. Chances are, well, you probably wouldn't want to be around each other. And yet people complain about money, constantly. And I think that's why it doesn't stick around. They don't have that great relationship with it. So they struggle with money, and you believe that it's because of their thoughts. What are some other reasons that people struggle with money?
There was a gentleman by the name of Miles Monroe. He did a teaching on how we're supposed to be rivers, not reservoirs,
Yes.
right? And the reason why I'm bringing this up, and Danielle will share a little bit more about it, is money requires something to be known as a multiplier effect. So inside of a banking system uses something called the velocity of money multiplier. The velocity of money multiplier is how many times that bank uses that money to lend out to different clients over a period of a year or XYZ amount of time, right? That same principle is what's needed in our lives, because if we become a reservoir, money doesn't flow through us.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is that we get fearful and we hold on to it. And then what happens is no different than when we get fearful and we clamp up, our body doesn't take in the amount of oxygen, right? It's scientifically proven that stress and anxiety restricts the ability for airflow and oxygen to go through our body. Well, that same thing happens with money. When we have an unhealthy relationship with it, we clamp up, we stress, and then money doesn't flow through our lives because we don't know how to handle it. And the truth of it is in us as people of faith, why would God give someone more resources when they can't even steward what they have now? One. Second is that they become a reservoir rather than a river for it to flow through them.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. You know, we've been speaking a lot about, and I know you guys have heard a lot, right, about emotional intelligence, right? EQ in this season. I believe that is, to complement what you're saying about Miles Monroe, is the emotional intelligence. You know, how do those around you, especially as parents, right, especially as even business owners, right, wherever you are, the way that you handle the stress of finances, up, down, all around, you know, like how do we handle that? And that emotions we think sometimes that we're hiding it, and really we're not, you know, and it's permeating everything around us. And we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware, and we have to actually shift our mindset and turn around and say, okay, again, reminder, right? What is money, right? How did we make it? You know, where did it come from? You know, the love that we have for our family or our businesses, you know, like how do we want to utilize it? I think we have to come back to the basics sometimes so that stress and our emotions don't go so scattered.
Yeah. I want to share one last thing. Proverbs 18:16. It says in Proverbs 18:16, it says that a person's gift opens up doors and puts them in the presence of influential people or kings, right? Now, it can be taken in two ways, right? It can be taken that an actual gift that we bring to people, which is what had happened with the magistrates, right? And Jesus.
Right.
And also the gift that God has given us that is deposited in us, right? And I'm a big believer that the gift that God has given us is what opens up doors for people to exchange money with our gift. And a lot of the times people put so much value on the money and not on the gift that created the money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's so good. And every single person has a gift they've been given. The question is, have you opened it up? A lot of people don't even know their giftedness, don't think about their purpose. And before we go in that direction, though, I love the fact of what you're saying about the struggling of money. I've heard people say when money gets tight, oh, we have to watch our money. And I go, well, why weren't you watching it before? Shouldn't we always be watching our money? And if so, how often should we be visiting our money and knowing where it's going?
That's no different than as a business leader, right? Every year, I would hope if you're a successful business leader, you're planning for what it looks like for your business to thrive. Well, that same methodology should be, how are we planning for our finances to thrive? Are we planning to spend down debt? I know there was many years ago, there was a year where Danielle and I, the goal that year was to have zero debt by the end of that year, because we had come out of a bad season. And we focused all of our energy. Every time we had money come in, we wrote a check and paid off, wrote a check and paid off. Now,
we won't mention, we didn't look at the debt that was coming in.
well, Actually, it's funny. No, it's really funny because there was a year, it was 2008, and it was a very tough year, and for Danielle and I, and for many people.
Yeah.
And we had done a terrible business deal. It went south. We lost everything. And Diana, her and I made a decision that if we were ever going to get out of the hole that we were in, which was a pretty big hole for us at a young age, we said we can't be focused on debt. We need to be focused on creating value. So we
That's good.
what we literally did is we allowed the debt to sit while our eyes stood on creating value. And within 12 months, this is the wildest thing. Within 12 months, we paid off all the debt, everything, right? And put hundreds of thousands in the bank that year, right? Because our attention wasn't on the debt, it was on creating value.
And I think it's very important for us to be surrounded around people that would help us in that situation. And I don't mean financially, I just mean with our mindset, right? We had a mentor. We were 28 years old at the time, 26, 28. And we had a mentor of ours who just said, I think you guys are just in too much debt and I can't put my name on it. And I don't see you guys getting out of this.
And then he didn't realize that he was speaking to Chad and Danielle Reyes. And that was like gasoline for us.
You knew that you had the giftedness and you knew how to add value, so you went after that, right? In your book, you said great achievement is to understand your giftedness. And it sounds to me when you were in all this debt, you focused on what you wanted to expand, which was just having an abundant mindset. So tell us about how you used your giftedness at that time and didn't focus on the debt.
Yeah. So that's a very good question, and I think it helped a lot of people. Well, one of the things is that when you're younger or less aware, you don't know what the gift you bring to the world, right? So you don't know the one or two things that you add the greatest value to people in their lives. And one of the things I did realize, and not to the level that I understand it today, or Danielle and I understand it today, but I did realize that I had the ability to help families take complexity and make it simple. So in the world that we're in at Wealth and Legacy Group is a lot of complexity. And one of the things I was able to do is to take complexity and make it simple. And another thing is when I believe in something, I'm able to move people forward because I believe in it and I know it would add value to their life. And that was the two things that we did in 2008 and 2009, that 12-month period of time that helped us get out of it, because I was able to say, okay, Chad, I could take very complex tax planning and bring it to successful families and get them to move forward because they can understand it and they want to move forward on it. The second is, I said, I believe in it. So if I believe in it, then they'll believe in it. And that was really the impetus for what we focused on. Obviously, without God's hand, none of that's possible. But that was where we put our energy.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Another thing was we had a vision, right? We had a vision, we had a heart. We had a heart to help people, and we had a vision to know what we were capable of doing to help people. And we didn't waver from that. We may have taken a detour, but we didn't waver from the vision.
And sometimes have flat tires, but that's besides the point.
Oh, in your book, the one part I loved a lot of it, I have to say, yet you say vision plus choices plus detailed plan plus accountability equals great achievements. Let's go a little bit into the detailed plan and who you had hold you accountable during that time.
Yeah, so that's good. The detailed plan is we did have a mentor that was in our life, and I didn't know how to do what he did, but I knew how to follow well. So my detailed plan was, I didn't have a plan that was successful, or we wouldn't have been in that situation. However, I knew he had a plan that was successful, and I knew we would get out of the situation, right? So I basically looked, and Danielle and I did, is we looked at what he was doing and said, okay, how can I add value to him? And the greatest way that I could add value to him was to magnify his message. His message was a very powerful message that resonated with successful entrepreneurs. If we could magnify his message with our database, we would be able to eventually get out of that. And that's what happened. And it was successful for the clients that we worked with. It was successful for him. And Danielle and I grew tremendously through it.
Yeah, we also hired a coach right before actually we got into that bad business decision, and we were really in a very bad financial situation for our age, and actually for any age. But we hired a coach, and honestly, that was somebody that we didn't want to let go. We knew we needed help. So, our mentor at the time, yes, we did what Chad said, but I did also share that he did say we were in such a bad hole. He was like, I don't want to put my name next to you guys. He goes, because it's not going to look good. I know. So, but
made him a lot of money.
We did.
Dianna, we all know how to do that. We make a lot of people a lot of money, right?
And yet it does pay off. An investment in yourself is still the best investment, right?
That is true.
But we hired ourselves a coach, and we didn't let go. Like you, Dianna, right? What you're doing with your group and what you have done throughout your life. And I honor that and I admire it. And that's something what I recognize is that was like our life jacket. And I just didn't want to let go of their hands. So anything we could scrounge together at that moment, if we had to choose what we were putting our resources to, that was it, because we saw that as having the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you give each one of those things credence: vision, choices, detailed plan, accountability, and therefore you have achievements. Now, I want to make certain everyone got this. You actually believed in your mentor. You believed in adding value to people. You magnified his message with your database, and you got a coach to hold you accountable. You actually followed your own advice, which I know you guys do all the time. A lot of people say, do what I say instead of what I do, right? And that's leadership.
Yeah.
It's parenting. Think about that for just a minute. What advice do you have for leaders about really having their audio and their video match up, right?
Yeah, that's good. The audio and video match up. I like that. I haven't heard that before. That's good. But Dianna, I would say this in the book, we write about making your purpose bigger than your problem. And the truth of it is that anyone who's ever going to do anything of significance, they have to constantly make sure that their purpose is bigger than their problem, right? A lot of times when you're creating wealth and you're sacrificing, there's a lot of sacrifice, as you know, that goes into it, right? To build something of meaning. A lot of times, most people have not focused on what how they're going to make their purpose bigger than the problem. Then when the problem comes, they focus so much on the problem, and you and I know that where energy goes, attention flows, right? So what happens is that the problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden the dreams and the visions that God deposited in your heart get taken to the grave because you didn't make your purpose bigger than the problem. You made the problem bigger than the purpose. And we use that methodology when we're working with families. There's sometimes these families are going through terrible things, even though they have all this wealth. And how do we make your purpose bigger than the problem? But that there, I believe, is so pivotal to having lasting success. Because if you're focused on problems all day long, the vision that you had is not really our friend and mentor. We both share the same friend and mentor, John Maxwell. And John says this. He says, a vision will be tested for authenticity. And the truth of it is that when we have a vision, that vision will be tested. And if that purpose is not bigger than that problem, that vision gets abandoned.
So the commitment level, I just heard. We have to test our commitment around our vision and our purpose. Did I hear that correctly?
100%.
Yes.
People don't know their purpose a lot of times, or they use that and they say, oh, I don't know what my big why is, or I don't know what my purpose really is. Do you have an idea of what they may do so they can actually solidify their purpose?
Well, there's something that we actually use, and we use with families. It's a professional development leadership assessment, and it actually identifies what their mission is, which is their passion, what their competency is, and then what their style is. It's backed up by science and psychology. And what we've used is it identifies by a few questions. It identifies what they're actually good at, what their talent is, their God-given talent, their competency. But then it also shares like what they're passionate about. And by putting your passion and your competency together, that's where your purpose lies. And that's what you've been designed and created to do on this earth.
In your book, if I get this correct, it said that we've got to start small, yet believe big.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, they don't have that belief in themselves. They
Yeah.
have self-confidence, but they don't have the self-worth.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Diana, so I say this often when I get up to speak to groups. Sometimes I wish people could look at how I see myself. And the reason why I look at myself a certain way is because I know what God says about me. What he says about me is I'm wonderfully, I'm perfectly made in his image, his likeness, right? And because of that, I operate out of that. Not that I'm good or I'm that great or I'm better than other people. I operate as, Chad, what does God say about you? And then regardless of the circumstance, I want to operate in that, right?
But share where you came from, your mindset of where you came from to when that occurred.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's so important.
It is. At the end of the day, how we look at ourselves is based a lot on where we were born, how we were raised, the lifestyle, the struggles, the conditioning that we've been through, right? Most people will not dedicate themselves to the point where they'll get a breakthrough because they don't realize that there's these two voices. You're not enough. You could do it.
Yeah.
You're not enough. You could do it. And what happens is that when you first make a decision that you're going to do something and do something significant, you're going to hear, you can't do it. It's never going to happen. If you keep feeding that voice, it's not going to happen. But you don't want to know what,
louder.
It gets louder. But what happens over time is little by little, that voice gets less and less and less. And your courage gets more and more and more. So now today, you fast forward 20 years, my thoughts are mostly positive. And you know this in psychology and the study of the brain, you know that most people have about 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000. Children have about 3,000, 3,500. 60,000 thoughts. 95% of them are negative and repetitive. So if you think about it, if you don't take your thoughts captive, those thoughts will consume you. And the truth of it is that the story we tell ourselves every day is either you'll never do it, you can't do it, or Chad, you could do it. Why could you do it? Because you're built in his image and likeness. He's designed you for a purpose. He's called you to be the head and not the tail. He's called you to be above and not beneath, right? That has to become the what drives us and our belief system, because then what happens is most of our thoughts are in alignment with what God says about us rather than what the world says about who we are and how we got to where we are.
And it doesn't come easy. One of the things that I had to learn, because I came from a background that, there was a lot of negative things that were spoken over my life to me. And I didn't realize that there was a story and a recorder that was playing consistently. Once I was able to become aware of it, right, I started to recognize that, number one, increased awareness does transform lives. And when we are increased, right, in that awareness, we take that thought and I have to pause. I've been practicing pausing a lot for a long time. I got to pause and then I got to change what that script is saying, what that story is saying, and be able to adjust and then act on that and not act on the negative aspect of it. And it takes some time. But the more and more, like my husband said, the more and more that we do it, right? Like, it starts to go up and our confidence and courage starts to increase.
Well, and when we pause to actually ask ourselves, is that true? Is it 100% true? And who would I be without that thought? And then start being that person versus the one that the storyteller is telling us all that crazy things. So let's say we want, first of all, this book, once again, the Awakening Your Potential. It goes into so many different areas of your life, wealth especially. And I know that that's a big thing in today's world. So with us starting small, yet believing big, did you use affirmations to help you in your belief system?
Yeah, so starting small and believing big, there's a couple of things I want to unpack that because I think it's very important for the listener that you have to have a dream and a vision of where you want to go, but you don't have to start big, right? If we can be in agreement on that premise that you could have a big dream, but you don't have to start big, then you start working on the beliefs and the thoughts and the beliefs that will impact the results. And that's where Danielle and I created an I am credo, a credo of who we are. That literally is like a pattern interrupt, and then it changes the neuroplasticity in the brain, where it literally creates different neural pathways, where those previous neural pathways that were not designed to create success are now being changed and creating newer pathways that have abundance and success. So we 2008 we started with credos or affirmations, and I mean I can share with one. I have one on my voice note that I'll play and listen to, and I do it every year.
Yeah, and I'll share this one. We also have a nonprofit organization where we help empower and equip youth. So we created our credo into a format where they were able to pick it up. And I've still been hearing stories that they keep it in their pocket because we created it like
so they can have it.
But it says, I am born to fulfill a purpose. I am born to be great. I am a vessel who shares the wisdom I have learned with others. I am open to learning from everyone, regardless of age or wealth. I am committed to having an attitude of gratitude. I am committed to being humble as a person as I become a person of influence. I am a person who respects others' views, regardless of whether I agree with them. And I am committed to the journey of mastery, which is novice, apprentice, journeyman, and master.
Wow. That's exactly who you guys are. You were describing yourself because that's who you said you were going to be, and you became that. I love affirmations. The words I am are the most powerful words in our entire English language. What follows those literally stays in our mind. And I love what you're sharing with us today. I know you've been through failure, and your book and my book really are kind of hand in hand and becoming more. And we talk about thoughts and how we can change our stories. I appreciate where you've been, that failure, yet that relationship with failure is what I'd like for you to talk about right now, because I think that's a big thing in everyone's life.
So, and I want Danielle to share, because I think she did a very good job on a recent podcast that we did, but I'll share this.
Which we'll be having you as a guest speaker, Dianna.
Yes. But, Dianna, the thing about failure is failure has to be an event, not an identity.
I like that.
You see, if I try something and it didn't work, that means what I tried failed. But most people make it their identity. I'm a failure because it didn't work. And because of that, it becomes very, very difficult to ever really try. And the truth of it is, and I ask the question often, I think it's in the book. I ask this question very often. I say, tell me about your high school years. And I watch the expression on people's faces, and they get light up and they're super excited. And I was a star athlete, and I was this cheerleader, and I was this, and lit up. And then I say, oh, that's great. Tell me about what you're doing now. Tell me where you're going. What's exciting? I just go to work every day, and I kind of, I just go through. And you know what happens? I recognize very quickly that their future is not brighter than their past. Their past is brighter than their future. And when someone's past is brighter than their future, they'll stop sacrificing, they'll stop learning, they'll stop growing, because you don't grow. You'll only grow for something that you're willing to sacrifice for. And if your future's not brighter, then you're not going to give up. And what I've learned is failure often beats people up, and they stop having a brighter future because the future that they have, the failures that they've experienced today, it's better that I don't try than if I try and I fail, because if I fail, I'm a failure. That's not my world that I live in. When I try and it doesn't work, means what I tried is not successful, not me. And my ability to separate role and identity, and I talk about it in the book, is really key. And Danielle brought up some really good points on a recent podcast that we did on the leadership thing.
Yeah, but I also think it's a great part now, and it's in the book as well, right? Is the cycle of success.
Yeah.
Right. So when we do fail, it's something that we actually show often, right? When we fail, and actually our mentor John Maxwell, right? He talks about the cycle of success. Fail, or test, fail, learn, improve, re-enter. And a lot of people actually, they test, they fail, and they re-enter. They test, they fail, and they re-enter. And they don't stop. to, to learn and improve.
They create a cycle of failure.
They did cycle of failure.
Yeah.
But the biggest part to that is I believe is that people jump in right away, right, to re-enter, is because they don't want to look like a failure and they don't want to admit that they failed. So Dianna, you said earlier, right? What did we do in that season? Well, when we're reflecting on it and we're learning from our failure, right? And then we're improving it, who do we bring in, right? Who are we vulnerable with? Who do we share who can help us to improve and re-enter? And that's something that I think we have not embraced as a society, because I know for myself, and it's funny because my mom actually heard me say it on the podcast, and she goes, Danielle, you're so right. We were like, you failed. You're not supposed to fail. You're supposed to get good grades. You're supposed to win at this, or you're supposed to be good at everything and not fail. And now when we embrace failure, but we embrace failure, Dawn talks about it too, is failing forward, right? How do we look at it as, okay, this is a stepping stone to success? We talk about failure and success being best friends. Well, if we look at failure and success as being best friends, well, that changes, right, the way that we think about failure. And how could we see failure as really a stepping stone to the success that we're about to step into?
I love that we're making this kind of full circle, because we started out with wealth being different than money and the psychology of wealth. Yet what we've been talking about is how important our thoughts are around everything that we do and the failure around everything that we do. I hear you saying we need to fail more so we can be more successful.
It's exactly what we're saying. I mean, you made it simpler, but that is what we were saying.
Well, listen, if we're not failing, we're not trying something new, and we're not growing.
Right. Well, you guys help people so much with their money, with their tax situation, with building wealth, and yet you start a lot with their thoughts. Could you share a story with us without giving anything away as to where people would know who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Maybe an incident where maybe you were helped or someone else that you helped become more, and they found that psychology of wealth actually helped them.
Yeah. So we there's a client of ours. We've been working with the family probably 10 years, very successful family. They're in the construction field, but when we first started working with them, the leader of the family, we were having meetings with Dianna, and I said to him something that literally changed the trajectory of our relationship together. I said, so and so. I said, when you're making major decisions, you need to make major decisions from a position of power, because the decisions sometimes people make that have generational impact comes from a position of weakness. And the thing that I know about being a follower of Christ and being a man of God is that when you're in a vulnerable spot, you don't make long-term decisions. You don't make forever decisions on a temporary feeling. And I shared that with him. I said, we want to make generational decisions from a position of power. And then that's what we started doing. We started working on how do we get him to a point where his decisions and his thought process is now coming from a position of abundance, even though he was very wealthy. But how do we get him in a position where he's thinking generationally and he's thinking more prosperous and in a position of power? Because when we do that, the decisions we start making are much better. And that's where we started with this one family. And we've been on a 10-year journey with them, helping them across generations and helping them with their family, their business, all around wealth.
Right. Because we started to shift that mindset, he started to embrace sharing with his family, right? When do you share with your family? Who do you bring in? And that started to change even the family dynamic. My heart is very much for family unity and family
First.
Family first. So it was how do we help prepare the family to be able to receive what they were about to receive down the road. And we needed to start today to help them prepare. And it all started with the psychology. It all started with the mindset and how he was looking at it and not being so fearful. A lot of families come with us and they're like, oh, I just know the money's going to ruin the family. Like, I just know my kids are going to, just blow it all. I know they're going to make poor decisions. I know, no. And it's like, okay, let's pause.
Yeah. Time out.
Because they don't realize they're actually making those decisions based on their feelings and their mindset, right? So you could just imagine where they would end up if somebody didn't stop them, pause, talk things through, and be able to shift that mindset to be able to see it to what they really, their heart and their mind really desires for their wealth and their family to be.
Powerful.
Yeah. Well, every time Tony and I speak with you, every time I hear you speak with other folks about their wealth and things that they could do to help their family to come, I mean, with tax situations changing and that, I know our listeners are going to want to reach out to you. How would they find you, and where would they find you?
They could reach out to me directly. My email is Danielle at WLG Wealth Legacy Group, privateclient.com. And I would love to be able to answer any questions or meet anybody that would like to talk.
Right. Are you on LinkedIn or any other social media that we should find you at?
I am. Chad Reyes has one. And I have one. Yes, we're on LinkedIn. That's really the only social media that we are on for Wealth and Legacy Group. But we do. I'd love to connect with anybody that would like to connect with us on LinkedIn.
Dianna, I just want to share one thing. I was looking at it. I'm looking at it right now. I want to share. I think it's really powerful. It's called the Pygmalion effect, and it was done by Rosenthal and Jacobson in the 1960s. And it was basically revealed that students performed 20% better when teachers believed they were capable of higher achievements. And the reason why that's what I was looking for. My eyes were down on that as we were going through. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is families perform better when you believe the best in them. So this study shows that students perform better because the teacher believed the best in the people. Well, families perform better when it comes to money when you believe the best in them and you believe that there's a greater potential, the future's brighter than the past. And it's the Pygmalion effect. So if anyone wants to check it out, it's pretty cool.
I love that. And I believe people grow into the conversations you create around them. I know you all have helped hundreds, if not thousands of people with their finances, and you can help our listeners as well, starting with the way they think about money and then helping them with the money they have to multiply it and then be able to leave it for their families by doing things like trusts, LLCs, all the things that you help them with to not only accumulate the money, yet to keep it. And I know you're very, very humble in what you do. So I want our listeners to know that once again, you've helped hundreds of thousands of people, very wealthy and those just starting out. So with anything, it is the name of your company and once again, where they would reach out to you.
Yeah, it's Wealth and Legacy Group, WLGprivateclient.com. And you can also send it to an email to Danielle at WLGprivateclient.com. That's how you can contact us directly.
Hey, and be sure and get this book. Be sure and get the book because it's going to take you through your potential in so many different areas and it will help you as well. Okay, thank you guys for helping each and every one of us become more. For those of you who are listening, be certain to hit the subscription button down below and subscribe to this podcast. And thank you all for helping us become known as one of the best women podcasters in the business. Thank you. See you next week.